Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the 8th Annual New York City Electroacoustic Improvisation Summit. I'm Adam Wilson. I'm the co-founder and director of this show. You're about to hear 4 different pieces of music. The only thing in common between these pieces of music is that the artists are improvising and they're using some sort of interactive computer systems. So we occupy this very small niche in the realm of computer music. Before we get started, I want to thank our student crew from the Entertainment Technology Department here at City Tech. They've done an amazing job. They do an amazing job every year, and this show really wouldn't be possible at all without them. So let's give them a round of applause. After the performances tonight, I'm going to invite all the artists up on stage to have a little discussion, and the audience, you'll be invited to come down and ask questions. So, please, when you're listening to the music and you think of things you want to ask, don't be hesitant to come up. We're going to have a mic set up right at the edge of the stage here. Come up and just ask your questions. It'll be very informal. Without further ado, let's start the show.
Пока еще ярок свет, Господи, дай же ты каждому, чего у него нет. Мудрому дай голову, трусливому дай коня. Дай счастливому денег,
Hey, everybody. At this time, I'd like to invite all the artists to come down. We're going to bring up some chairs. Our co-founder of the festival, Kevin Patton, is here, and he's going to lead a little discussion, moderate a little discussion, and we'll open it up to audience questions shortly. So come on down, guys. Our moderator will be here shortly. So while we're waiting, I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I was listening just to the side there, and just brilliant performances from everyone, and so different as well. I also, again, want to say thank you to our student crew. Again, did a wonderful job tonight. It's all volunteer crew. They've been here all day. They're here every year, and they do a fantastic job. So again, let's give them another round of applause. Thank you, guys. There he is.
Hello. Hot mic, hot mic.
And we have these four, so we'll just share them around.
Okay, well, first, I know we had a good round of applause. I just want to personally thank everybody for their incredible contributions. Such a varied program, really. I mean, it was really like in some really incredible directions, and that's a testament to the incredible talent and vision of the people here on stage. So, generally what we like to do in these talkbacks is, just kind of share with the audience kind of your approach, how you think about things. I mean, without getting too academic, right? So, there's the really tight control of small and deliberate gestures, and then there's this kind of idea that you have these kind of long forms or drones that are also simultaneously happening. I wonder how you think about balancing that if you want to present something like this. Levy.
I'll go first. Hi, everybody. Thanks again to Kevin and Adam for organizing this. It's an honor to be part of this awesome show. The way I think about it in a very instrumental approach. At some point, I really asked myself the question of what does it mean to play electronic music live? And I've been a lifelong percussionist. And coming to electronic music later in life, having played percussion my whole life, I knew what it meant to practice an instrument for 10 hours a day, for 10 years, and honing that control of rhythm, sound quality, phrasing, and also being able to make a mistake. So the electronics that I would build would have that kind of vulnerability and transparency and that kind of control. So believe it or not, I've practiced those joysticks with a metronome, just like I would practice a woodblock with a metronome. So that's a little bit of a peek into that.
Hello, everyone. My approach is that I have a sound palette. I see it as like a painter who has different colors, and then I get into an emotional state. I like to work with the emotions related to the piece or how I feel, and then be quite playful with it. So I improvise with the sound that I hear, and I play with myself when I'm alone or with other musicians when I'm playing with other musicians. And then I see what happens and I construct from there.
Well, we can attack this together.
You start.
Well, I love a good drone, and Nikki does too. And sometimes we'll start with a drone, and then I'll try to pick as many odd instruments to make that drone on, whether it be a a normal guitar, a weird piece of metal, some really crummy old guitar pedals, and we'll make a drone, and Nikki'll sax it, and then we start beating on things and waving our arms around.
It's really about finding textures.
That's what I meant.
Kind of build on, and sure, yeah, coming out of a drone, coming out of maybe a tonal center, because as much as I like to get super avant-garde and super just noisy, I always come a little bit back to tonality, even if it's more on the atonal side of tonality. So I think for me, it's always thinking about like pitch sets and tonal centers and how to build upon those, and taking that to different instruments and kind of trying to pick instruments aside from my saxophone where they might do something that I don't expect, which is why I like using analog synthesizers, because the two that I have today, they're pretty predictable and I can harness them okay, but I do have other instruments where I can't, and I don't know what's gonna happen, and it kind of—
That's mostly what I do. I don't know what's gonna happen.
Well, yeah, and then spontaneity comes into it, but we do tend to try to have a basic structure of where we're going to go that are built really around samples.
Yeah.
And then things happen and everything's different all the time.
But like live samples, right? Like
What was that?
live sampling?
Both.
Sometimes live I often sample.
You were looping, yeah.
Sampling and looping her. Looping. Yeah. There's definitely live samples, but there's also, set pieces.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I don't think I've ever done a drone before.
You don't say.
I love music that has drones, but it's not something that I normally do. I can relate a lot to what Levy was saying about having an instrument, a traditional instrument like percussion that you practice a lot and develop technique at. And we were just having a discussion earlier about, hey, if Kevin's also a guitarist, if we had been born later than we were, would we, the guitar was very popular when we were kids, would we play the guitar, or would we just manipulate electronics? And I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that I spent an incredible amount of time trying to learn how to play this instrument, so I don't want to just throw it away. So I've always wanted to be able to just play my guitar and have all this music sort of generate from my playing in real time, and that's something I've been working on for a long time. So in this piece, when I'm playing, all the stuff that's happening is sort of indirectly controlled by what I'm playing on the guitar. So the guitar is my sort of controller for the rest of the.
And you program that accompaniment, yes?
And I program the
So is
software.
it responding to what you're doing immediately?
It's responding in real time.
Yeah.
It's generating harmonies and things like that. In this case, not a whole lot of harmonies, but the bass line and some of the rhythms are generated from what I'm doing on the guitar.
That was shredding.
Yeah, and there's a
That is shredding.
there's certainly a nod to a certain type of rock or heavy metal guitar playing there too. Yeah.
Could be. That kind of brings up an interesting thing, because if I think about the contrast in the different styles and kind of the cultural touch points that the musical sounds that you all are using brings us to, and I wonder if you might have any thoughts about that, because like that vocabulary of shred guitar fusion has a specific kind of, well, specific is maybe too strong, but it has a kind of cultural location around that sound that evokes feelings, memories, especially people who are perhaps our age. But of course, kind of like this kind of this kind of electronica, this kind of semi-beat oriented drone, long tone that also has a history and a cultural perspective that maybe is identifiable to some of the people in the audience. And then beat spilling, like what you're doing, Levy, and then it's kind of almost this evoking of kind of like Renaissance chanson. At the same time, you have all this kind of dissonance going. How do you think about that? Is that just, it just happens, or is that maybe a way that you could help maybe some of the audience members who aren't used to perhaps hearing some of these kind of sounds, like how to get entry to it, how to relate to it?
I'll simplify that to how did I choose my sounds and how do I organize them? And how did I get to that kind of, how did I arrive at my sonic vocabulary?
Yeah, I guess, but I mean, like, yes, definitely, that is part of the question, but the other piece of it is, like, is there kind of like a cultural, relatable, outside of the technical part of how you came up with that, you know, that is, you could maybe articulate for the audience. So I'm trying to think of, like, what are the entry points into kind of more challenging textures and music, like what was just presented?
Not to jump ahead, but I love Halloween, and I like
The movie or the holiday?
some of the movies, and you know, I like soundtracky stuff, and you know, moody, cinematic, that old kind of, you know, stuff. So I think that's a entry point. Like, it may be experimental, instrumental music, but you could hear it in a movie. That old tired thing, you know. I feel like we're creating scenes, tableaus, sonic tableaus that you know, people can hopefully close their eyes and get scared or come up with their own visuals. You know, so cinema. You know, that's my cultural starting point. What about you, Nikki, with those things?
Somebody else first.
Yeah, and I'll continue a little bit. The way I got these sounds, it wasn't really coming from a cultural influence. The way I found it was really just experimenting and playing with these tools. I mean, I was using sine waves and modulating those sine waves, which are kind of the raw material of working with electronic sound. So in playing with that, I kind of really related to the way that I play acoustic instruments and how pitches are arranged on a marimba or a vibraphone or a piano. So I created my own tuning system, which is 10 steps to the octave and a half, and then 4 units of those going upwards. And so I was just exploring harmonies and different kinds of patterns. I mean, I could have tuned it normally, but I was just kind of bored of the normal tuning system. I didn't want to be able to play Happy Birthday. There's a lot of other things that I could do with a new organization. So I kind of went from the ground up of just raw electronic sound. Then for the drums, I just dug through some sample packs and just made myself an electronic drum kit. And maybe I in high school listened to a lot of drum and bass and jungle and dubstep, and I love that, like, also 808 kick drum sound, and there's a lot that can be done with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sophie?
Yeah, well, I was very influenced by classical music I play classical piano, so it's really in me this traditional harmony, but I'm also a fan of Ligeti and Berriot and electroacoustic sounds, so I created mainly from my voice, from a little sound of my voice or a note, I created like these massive textures or bells or strangers sounds. And at the same time, I'm very influenced by Russian folk songs. I sang a little bit of a Russian folk song in there. And I think that whole mixture is what comes out at some point in this. I mean, this composition, this improvisation was based on the war in Afghanistan, but the side of the Soviet soldiers spending 10 years in Afghanistan for nothing, basically, and they were told that they were they were saving the population there, which was a total lie. Exactly the same is happening now in Ukraine. And so for that purpose, I took an Afghan beat. Actually, I checked out what an Afghan beat sounds like, and then I changed it a little bit. I mean, I made it not so clear, so to say, and all that is coming out in there. And then I saw that I had my heartbeat there in my set. I had forgotten yesterday. And then I saw the heartbeat. I thought, okay, I gotta put that in there as well, because it just fits the idea of the piece.
Yeah, I come from kind of a classical music background to a certain extent. And I've always just liked experimental music, be it the avant-garde of the 50s and 60s and electronic music and tape music, new music, or, more experimental pop music, noise, kind of art rock. So I definitely come from that place always. And then, I have my own way of performing too, and my own way of thinking about melody and harmony and how those work together. And, as a composer, that's how I write as well. So I improvise like a composer, not really like a performer. It's just, I think it differently in my head. And what comes out, and I kind of just go with it and hope it works, and get into the moment, and try to draw on whatever inspiration I have. And I feel that going back to like being cinematic and things like that, that's also important, and I always say that for us, when we perform, it's venue and location is so important, because you really, as an improviser, you're almost improvising with the space around you as well. You're kind of using, just the acoustics of a room, the mood in the room, the resources available to you. That's all part of your mood. That's all part of how you relate to your space and to your instrument. So kind of just trying to be present and understand what's around me, who's around me, and how that's affecting me, and just kind of letting it happen. I think that's kind of where I ultimately come from during every performance, Of course, then going back and being like, these are my influences, but I think really it's being present and letting things happen.
Should we open it up? Yeah, sure. Audience. Would anyone in the audience like to ask a question? Yeah, there's a mic right there. There's a mic right there in the middle.
This should be good. We know this guy.
This is, hello. It's for Professor Nikki and Dr. Buss. So I want to say I like that, and I've seen you obviously many times. You bring a lot of different sound sources and manipulation. But I was wondering, do you ever apply it to more traditional like ensemble music, like a local band? And would they happen to be playing any shows maybe next week? And do you have merch?
That's a plant. Someone planted him in the audience.
I think that's an important question.
Well, I think that lends itself to something interesting, though. I think that, we performed as a duo today, and everybody else was really solo with electronics. And, I know when I'm solo with electronics, I think about that as almost being a duo as well. But to have two live humans, we did that, and everybody else kind of performed with their electronics as that kind of human electronics duo. And I'm talking too much around that, but you guys know what I mean. Christian and I perform a lot together, and I think that I'm almost, I don't know, it almost feels like improvising with myself when I'm
Great. No, I mean,
when you improvise and you play a lot and you make music with somebody, you start to understand just nuances of how they perform, how they play. And like I was saying, we play together a lot, and that was a drummer that we play with, and he was trying to plug
Like where?
shows we have coming up on Tuesday.
We have
But-
in the band that we play in with that gentleman and some other people, our friend Steven, it's definitely normal songs. I sing,
Right.
and
But how does that lend itself to like what we do now? I think a lot.
yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. I try to be a storyteller, even using weird experimental sounds. I try to tell stories, which, sometimes they're good stories, sometimes they're not. But with Vestments, that's the other band. I think we want to make normal, like structured songs, but we want to bring in interesting sounds and structures, but it's still within a pop format. So
doing something like this is interesting because we really take away, because there's performance practice in pop music, just as there is in classical music, and we take ourselves out of that in this context and open things up to maybe different forms and not just innately feeling like we have to conform to anything that's traditional.
But listening to everyone tonight, I thought it would be really interesting if we all played in one group, because everyone would bring, like, you could bring the vocal side of it, you could bring the beats, and then you could bring I mean, we've got a band here, so you're out, Rich. So maybe next time we'll have a big Saturday Night Live, everybody jams at the end.
Well, this is actually an idea that we've had. We haven't done it yet, obviously, but but we've thought about that, having a show where everybody sort of performs the thing that they do, and then maybe not everyone all together necessarily, but maybe we pair people up, or if people find a pair of groups find each other's work interesting, then they work together. And that might be something that we explore.
1 year from today.
Yeah, 1 year from today. Any other questions out there? Yeah, come on down.
Test. Hello? Yeah, so I just want to ask you about your process for improvising. Like, is it purely free improvisation, or do you start with some sort of plan, like a score or like some sort of sketch of what you're going to do? I pose this to everyone. Like, because I'm coming from like free improvisation, but what is your system for improvising when you
That's a great
do
question.
your thing?
Why don't you start?
You start. You're in.
I don't know if I'm totally prepared to answer that question. Wow, there are sort of antagonists of improvisation that will say that you, in the moment when you have to play, especially if you're playing a traditional instrument, your body will sort of revert back to muscle memory of riffs that you played, or things that are just circling around in your mind from the music that you listen to or whatever. So it's very difficult to sort of compose in real time, which is essentially what improvisation is. I don't agree with that criticism I don't agree that we just get sucked into that black hole of muscle memory, that we inevitably get sucked into that black hole of muscle memory. We can escape it. And so I think part of my approach to improvisation is trying to prevent that from happening, if that makes any sense. I also have for me, it's not just playing, but I also spend a fair amount of time programming computers to react to what I'm doing and make structures out of what I'm doing. And part of that process allows me to make things happen that are not necessarily so predictable, and those things force me to interact in a way that lets me break out of sort of cliches or riffs or patterns that I would that I'm in danger of falling into. But in terms of you know, so, but that still doesn't tell you what, you know, how do I structure things when I play. Sometimes I use a pedal board. I didn't tonight. I sort of baked the structure into the algorithms that were generating the background, and I sort of, and what I played, it's different each time, but there are chunks that are similar over similar structures that are presented by the algorithmically generated music. That, you know, it's sort of, you know, it's just sort of organically, I infer what should be played from those things. So I'm cheating a little bit, I think. It's not 100% improvisation in that sense. And I'm kind of rambling on and on now, so I think I'm going to pass the mic to somebody else who has more coherent thoughts on this topic.
I'll jump in.
All right, great.
So just another perspective. I'm coming at this from, well, tonight for this performance, I played in a lot of different kinds of musical contexts, very much from the free improvisation angle of it. So with these tools that I have, I wanted to challenge myself to play something that I've never played before. And to prepare for that, I think of it a lot. I think of practice on a particular platform or a particular instrument. I mean, Adam was saying maybe we go back to these riffs or rhythms or little gestures that we kind of store as our vocabulary. It's good to store those things and to rely on them, but then to recognize them and then subvert them and mess with them and turn them upside down and inside out and see what that's like. And I will say that this setup I've been playing for a decade, and I haven't reprogrammed the sounds. I haven't adjusted any mappings or scaled any values. Like, it's this setup that I can control rhythm, pitch, volume, intensity, and so I haven't done any compositions for it. But over time, my voice continues to evolve if I build it in a way that it's transparent enough to be like a rich enough instrument where I can find regions within the space it controls that I haven't found before. I could lean back on things that I've done in the past, but I want to keep pushing that sort of freely improvised spirit.
When I play with musicians, I don't know what I'm going to do. I know which sound is where, so I can play in real time with the sounds. But if I do a solo performance, then I practice an idea. I have an idea of a structure that I practice, so that the going from one sound to the next is organic, or and that there's a structure to the sound, to the song, because I do like that it's not just, oh, this is a nice sound, and then, oh, that's another nice sound, you know. I like there to be a movement, and then I practice that, and then during the improvisation, I can go somewhere else if I feel like it, or I play with the structure that I had in mind, and then it becomes also sometimes something else. I mean, it's always different in the end, but a structure. There's a structure. Yeah.
Nikki and I have recently been talking about the idea of having a modular set where, you know, we have certain sections and we can switch them around, and we don't necessarily know how we're going to get from one section to the next, and that's where the improvisation comes. And then when we're in the middle of the piece, there can be improvisation within it, but there are not even start or stop points, but there's definitely some sort of...
It's like an idea around maybe a sample or a set of textures, you know, to say, like, for example, we used to have this set that we did quite often, and it was all improvised, but we kind of knew when things were going to come in and where, based on when you would start maybe a sample or something, and we had this one section called, like, pigs. And it was just, like, a lot of squealing, and we knew that it would happen.
Wanking.
And then she would start squealing, and I had squealing samples, and we'd squeal. it was really horrific.
We could do pigs, and it would just.
Here comes pigs.
We say, okay, we'll start with pigs.
Start with pigs. Yeah, we have really funny titles for all of our sections, so.
But it's an interesting way to kind of think about doing a set, and if somebody's like, hey, we need you to play 2 sets an hour each or something, we could do that. And we would just be like, okay, we're going to start with pigs and then go to, there was bees.
Sometimes we encore with pigs,
But
reprise.
to have that modular idea is really interesting, because then if we have all of these things kind of more or less at our disposal, we can enter a space and say, okay, well, this is kind of the vibe I'm getting from this. Let's maybe use these.
We
5
did not
minutes.
play pigs tonight.
We did not do that.
You're welcome.
Please note. Yeah, we'll take, maybe this will be our last question.
So clearly so much of what you do is spatial. It's creating like this atmospheric thing. And that kind of develops as your sound pad almost as you're playing. When you're finally able to break out of building that sound pad, what is your thought process to like going into a more, is it going into a more classical structured piece or rhythm or tempo, or after you get past that initial step, what is that switch over like in your brain? Or is there one, That's my question.
I think that's to you, Christian.
I guess it depends on how we've structured the modular aspect of it. Like if we had some beats in our set, so I don't know. Like I said, we love to drone, and then we love a good beat. I don't know how to answer.
Are you talking kind of about form? Like how do we begin and then kind of decide on a form?
Yeah.
Okay. That's an interesting question, because I think for us, and I can't speak for everyone, but I think that you do, it's kind of like the idea of muscle memory, or you inherently tend towards certain actions and tend towards certain, breath structures and dynamics. So I think part of that is just kind of innate, and it just kind of happens naturally. And part of it, it would be dependent on what is going to happen next. Is there a next section? Do you know that you have to end in 3 minutes?
Yeah, do you want to end the set like we ended on a kind of me looping her sax, and it creates a certain mood. I knew we wanted to end like that, and we also started with looping her sax, so we wanted to kind of have the story start and end at the same place, and that's all I can say.
I have an improvising partner. Every time we record something, he listens to it and he goes, "That's sonata form." Every single thing we play, he thinks it's sonata form when he analyzes it. Yeah.
I guess anything could be.
I think a lot. So
Back to A.
maybe form is just in our perception. I mean, that's a weak answer, but it also could be that we naturally tend towards certain structures and things like that. Just like I think there have been lots of experiments to totally escape harmony, but it's hard to escape the weight of the harmonic series. It's something that's totally embedded in us and part of the physical universe. So we're always either aligning with it or fighting against it, or doing something with it. Even if you're doing 10-tone equal temperament across an octave and a half or something like that. I feel like sometimes the ear will still try to resolve those sounds into traditional harmonies, and perhaps the same thing is true of formal structure.
yeah, I find a very interesting question, and I was thinking that in my set I have rhythm, melody and harmony, and atonal textures, and that I don't like it when either of these ways of playing music is too long. So and it's always a challenge to decide when do I go to a rhythmic phase and when do I go to a harmonic phase, and how long do I stay in the atonal texture. It's always a challenge. It's always a challenge. Yeah. But it happens during the performance. You start thinking, okay, I think now it's enough of this. I don't know. Then you go to the next, or yeah. But it's a process, and it's learning all the time, feeling when do I stop, when do I end, how long is the piece. It's a decision. It's actually making decision all the time in real time. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit more. Yeah, for me, it's all decision making. Within the spirit of freely improvising, I will put an idea on the table, and then I'm going to play with that idea and develop it, repeat it, break it, turn
not a
it
form.
down.
Not a form.
And then I'll say, should I do something else? No, I'm going to stay with this. And then maybe I will do something else. Maybe I'll come back. And then maybe I'm going to mess with how long I'm staying in each of them. And just playing with that in real time, but also just trying to create a sense of drama and surprise and storytelling. And yeah, I just want to keep it interesting for myself and also for hopefully the listener. But yeah, that's one of the hardest things in improvising, just deciding what to do and what not to do.
And there it is, what to do and what not to do. I think that's a great place to end. I would like to thank the crew. Great job, great sounds. Let's give a round of applause to everyone who helped make this evening such a success. And to our performers, we were graced with their presence and their wonderful sounds.
Thank you guys, sincerely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you and good night.